So my name is Krish. I'll be a speaker for this webinar. And about my profile, I've been working in IT for the last 18 plus years and on cloud computing from 2010 onwards. I am an enterprise cloud architect. I support businesses to move to cloud platform, design their cloud security strategy, and align their business requirements to the cloud computing strategy. And also, I do training for various things in cloud computing and information security. That's about my profile. And for more information, you can visit my LinkedIn profile. To start with, team, this is the agenda we are having today regarding the cloud computing interview preparation. So we'll first of all talk about the fundamentals of cloud computing, and then what are the necessary skills which we need for the career path in cloud computing, and what are the specific skills we specifically need for each kind of a job role. Then we'll basically talk about how to prepare for an interview, and what are the how you have to basically answer some questions regarding the interview. And I'll give you an overview about the CV and resume preparation and all. The reason why companies go to cloud computing nowadays is that cloud is basically something which is used by 80% organizations worldwide nowadays. As you all know, cloud computing is something which is used by 80% organizations worldwide. So like the same way, there are many companies who is going to cloud platform. There is a lot of organizations now coming back to on premises as well. Okay, like means in 2023 itself, there is a lot of companies, like 10% more companies now have gone to cloud computing, and there is a lot of companies still migrating back to on premises. We need to understand the job opportunities, and we need to understand the benefits of cloud computing, and we also have to understand how to basically make sure that you can build a strong and secure career in cloud computing. So to speak about cloud computing in a very high level overview, cloud provides the user and collection of services on and on demand access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources. So to make it simple, now normally what we do is that when you basically go to a on-premises infrastructure, a business has to take care of building the infrastructure, hosting it, managing it, troubleshooting it. So the business has to take care of the end-to-end infrastructure when they basically go for the on-premises. But at the same time, when you basically go for a technology called as cloud computing, the biggest benefit we are having is the team, we are utilizing an infrastructure. When we talk about especially the word called as public cloud and all, we are utilizing an infrastructure which is hosted by, or which is basically deployed by a third party called as a cloud service provider, and we are using that infrastructure, or we are utilizing the infrastructure in a pay as you go model as per our business requirements. That's a primary thing. Now for example, now normally what we do is that when you basically want to have a storage, you have to buy a storage, or if you want to have a server, you have to buy the server. But if you go to the cloud computing platform, you can get the storages, servers, databases, containers, DevOps, IDEs, and whatever you want, like this artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all these things you will get in the form of a service. You will get everything like this in the form of a service. So cloud provides you all of these things in different ways in the form of services. And the reason why most of the companies go to cloud computing is that team, cloud offers an enormous amount of benefits. The primary benefit which we all know about cloud computing is that team, the cloud offers an extensive cost benefit, which all we all know that the cloud basically provides an extensive cost benefit. So to give you an example for the same, now when you basically plan about or plan for deploying an infrastructure or building an infrastructure in the on premises, what we basically do is that we have to spend a huge amount of money, which we call it as capex or capital expenditure, and we have to invest on deploying it, we have to invest on managing it, we have to invest on maintaining it. So we have a lot of investments. But at the same time, when you basically go to cloud computing, these investments are completely eliminated, and you will get an infrastructure which is hosted by someone already, and you can use it in the form of a pay as you go model. So you can thereby reduce the initial expenditure and thereby reducing the running cost as well. That's a major one reason why people or companies go to cloud computing. The second most important reason why companies go to cloud computing is basically what we call as a scalability. So what is a scalability? Now you have a business. Okay, you have a business, and can you basically tell your customers that because there is a less of, because we don't have a sufficient amount of hardware capacity, we are going to shut down for next 2 days. Like simply I'm telling my customers that because there is a lesser hardware capacity I'm having, I'm not able to provide you service for the next 2 days or 1 day or maybe 5 hours or 4 hours. Is it possible? No, right? So we want to make sure that we must have a proper infrastructure, we must have a proper and effective infrastructure which can basically work, which can basically increase or decrease as per the changing business requirements. So as per my business requirements, I need my infrastructure to grow as per my business, and once the requirement is reduced, I just wanted to get it back to normal shape. So that is basically what we call as scalability. If you use the cloud computing properly, and if you know how to configure the cloud computing properly, the cloud can provide you with the capability called as a scalability. And the third one is basically what we call as a resiliency. So what is a resiliency, team? When you talk about the word called as resiliency, it means that, now resiliency means what? Resilience is basically all about maintaining the quality of service. I want to make sure that I want to make something up and running without having, without, even if there is a fault happens, even if there is a issue happens, I want to make sure that my services can continue operating even in case of any kind of a challenge. So the cloud computing can basically provide you, as the cloud service provider, basically have a lot of infrastructure uh, spread across multiple locations, which we call it as regions and availability zones. It is possible for the cloud service provider to provide a proper resilient infrastructure. The next most important point is the team. Now let's suppose that your company gave you a laptop. Assume that you basically go to a business and your company gave you a laptop for your daily job. Your company gave you a laptop. So is it for the lifetime they are giving you, team? So now I join a company and basically my company is giving me a laptop. Is it for the lifetime they are giving me this laptop? No, right? Whether it's basically working or not, this particular laptop, okay, this particular laptop, you have to basically give it back, right? After 3 years or after a particular period which they have mentioned, you have to get it back and you have to basically get a new one, right? Because for everything in the company, there is something called as a EOL, end of life events are there, expiry events are there, right? So basically, when you go to the cloud platform, as you're not owning any infrastructure, as you are not owning an infrastructure, obviously what happens, team, you don't have to worry about this end of life events. The cloud is relying on a technology called as virtualization, and what you are creating is basically a kind of a virtualized machines, virtualized storage and all. So the underlying hardware is taken care by the cloud service provider, and you never have to worry about this end of life events of your infrastructure. And obviously you have a pay as you go model. You have to only pay for what we are utilizing. That is basically what we call as a pay as you go model. Then we have something called as a effective BCDR. What is an effective BCDR, team? Effective BCDR means that effective business continuity and disaster recovery. So now I have a business. Okay, I have a business. So when basically I work as a part of a business, I want to make sure that whatever happens, my business must be able to continue. So ability of a business to continue operating even in case of a disaster is what we call as business continuity. And if there is something goes wrong, the ability to recover from that failure is what we call as a disaster recovery. Now definitely, even if you go to the cloud platform, BCDR is basically the responsibility of the, or it's basically the major part of the BCDR becomes your responsibility. But the benefit is that when you go to cloud computing, as the cloud service provider have multiple locations across the globe, we basically call it as regions. Okay, like in AWS you have a Mumbai region, in AWS you have a Singapore region, in Azure we have a East India, Central India, West India. So you have different locations across the globe by the cloud service provider, and these locations are properly connected using proper structural cabling. And the benefit is that even though one location goes down, or even though there is a downtime happen, you can plan your BCDR more quickly and more cost efficiently when you basically go for the cloud platform. And last but not least, the cloud provides you something called as a managed services. So what is a managed service? if you have basically managed a kind of a Kubernetes cluster, or if you have basically touch upon a Kubernetes deployment, you will see that the pain which we have for making sure that these servers are 24/7 running, these servers are basically able to meet our requirements properly, these servers are basically not going down. So all these things are basically a very hectic task, right? But when you go to the cloud platform, what the benefit is that the cloud service provider provides Kubernetes as a service. That means what? They will provide me Kubernetes servers or Kubernetes nodes and everything. By default, they will deploy it for us. And all I have to do is that I have to deploy the containers on top of it. I'll give you another example for the same. Okay, I will just go give you one more example for the same. For example, let's say if I basically go for something called as a databases, okay, DBs. So when you basically go for a DB, there is a job role called as a DBA. What is a DBA? A database administrator. When talking about the job of a DBA, there is a lot of things involved as a part of it, right? Like DB updation, DB patching, DB maintenance, DB high availability, database creation, normalization. They have to do a lot of activities. But when you go to the cloud computing, they provide something called as database as a service. They provide something called as container as a service. They provide something called as serverless as a service. So they provide a lot of managed services. That means a lot of things will be taken care by the cloud service provider. This is the initial benefit. It means there is a lot of benefits like this when you basically go to a cloud computing. The next thing is that, team, like the same way the cloud is providing benefits, it also have a lot of drawbacks. Now, this is the point where I want to start talking about the career opportunities and basically job roles. Now, if you see the internet, if you see LinkedIn, if you see many social media platforms, many professional media platforms, or many locations, like the same way many people praise the cloud, at the same time there is a lot of people or a lot of organizations is now migrating back to on premises. So have you think the reason why many companies are facing challenge in the cloud and going back to on premises? There can be many reasons which I will discuss now, but one major thing is the team lack of understanding. The reason why many companies has to go to on premises back to on premises because the lack of understanding or the lack of a proper cloud strategy. Now that is the reason why now companies are basically uh, you know trying to get more people which is specialized on various aspects of cloud computing, like cloud security, DevSecOps, cloud DevOps, then cloud operations management, cloud SOC management, cloud architecture. Like this, there is a lot of things which is coming up based on various kind of requirements like this. Because now if you ask an AWS administrator, like for example, assume that I'm an AWS expert. Just to take an example, I'm an AWS expert. So if you ask an AWS expert, okay, if you ask an AWS expert which cloud to go for, he will definitely say, yeah, go to AWS. He will not think anything more, right? So you're asking him which is the best cloud. Can we basically go for cloud? He will simply say AWS. If you ask an Azure guy which is the best cloud, he will say Azure. But that is not what we need. Now, companies need people in multiple aspects who can understand the business requirements, who can manage cost in the cloud computing, who can basically identify the best cloud service provider. Like this, the businesses now have a lot of requirements coming up. And that is why now the number of jobs, if you see the job market also, the number of jobs in cloud computing or the number of job profiles is getting increased in the cloud day by day. Okay, so I will come to the job role part specifically, but primarily I'll talk about the drawbacks of cloud. These are some major reasons why many companies come back to on premises. One major issue in the cloud is basically what we call as a multi-tenancy team. Now, what is a multi-tenancy? When you go to the, for example, let's say team, if I go to a platform called as Google Drive, okay, Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive, etc. Now, are they giving you a dedicated physical storage device, team? In the back end, are they giving you a dedicated physical storage? Like, for example, I open my Google Drive and are they giving me a 15 GB free complete physical storage there only for me, dedicated? No, right? I'm basically getting storage from a massive cluster, a massive set of storage they are having, which is shared among multiple customers. That means maybe on the same piece of hardware, I have multiple customers like this. I have multiple customers' data, which is getting stored on the same piece of hardware. And this separation between my data and your data is simply logical. And due to some reason, if this separation is not proper, if the separation breaks, it can cause a lot of disastrous effects, right? So that is the reason why multi-tenancy is basically said to be the one of the biggest security challenge in cloud computing. Now the next point is a bit weird. Krish, you told me in the previous slide that cost is one major reason why companies go to cloud computing, and I will say that cost is also one of the major reason why companies come back to on premises. Okay, cost is one major reason why companies go to cloud computing, and cost is again one major reason why companies come back to on premises. To just give you an example, team, you can see this here that I have a services here. Okay, for website hosting, if I want to host a website, I have more than 7 services in AWS. If I want to simply host a website, I have more than 7 services in AWS. I have more than 5 services in Azure. So how do I know which is the best one for me? So that is one major reason. Lack of proper understanding of the cloud services and choosing the proper cloud service provider and proper cloud service is basically very important to manage the cost effectively. Even there is a lot of more factors are there for sure, but this is also one major reason why we have to base. So that is one major reason many companies go back to on premises, because now there is a company here. Okay, there is a company here. This company is currently want to go to cloud. Okay, this company want to go to cloud platform, and the problem is that this company, when they try to go to the cloud platform, they don't have a plan. Most companies go to cloud without a proper cloud strategy, without a proper plan. So what happened in that case? If a company is basically going to cloud computing without making a proper plan, by simply randomly selecting cloud services or randomly selecting things, it is going to be a serious challenge. Now, there is a lot of cost in cloud. Every action you're doing in the cloud is chargeable to you, right? So for example, let's say if you over provision a hardware, if you basically add more storage, if you basically do anything in the cloud, everything is chargeable, right? So that's the reason why costing is a major concern when you basically go to the cloud. Ineffective cost management is one of the major challenge why many companies is now coming back to on premises. And the third one is lack of control. Now I'll give an example, team. Now when you basically go to a cloud platform, we have a three types of services. As we all know that when you basically go to a cloud platform, we have a three kind of services: IaaS services, PaaS services, and SaaS services. Now, in which service is basically where as a customer you have more control? In which service is basically where a customer have more control? I have more control on my IaaS services, right? The major control I am having is basically on the IaaS services. But there also I am only or I am depending on the completely on the vendor. They give me a virtual machine and I am deploying the OS inside that and managing the OS inside that. So still I am having a lot of things, or there is a lot of things taken care by the vendor. And if you go further to the PaaS, SaaS, etc., what is the problem there? Lot of things are taken care by the cloud service provider, and you basically have a lack of control there. Like for example, now I'm saying that as for my auditing purpose, or as for a forensic analysis, as for some reason I want to get the operating system logs in the past. Is it possible, team? I want to get the OS logs or operating system logs in the past. Is it possible for me to get that? No, right? Because that is completely managed by the cloud service provider, and it is not possible for you to basically get the OS log files when you go for a pass. And if you go for a SaaS, you cannot, you are simply a consumer. So, like the same way, there is a lot of challenges we are having when you basically go to cloud computing. A few more things. The fourth the challenge you're having is that, team, cloud is a global offering. Now, team, can you give me 100% assurance that your my data is properly stored in a one location only? Like for example, now they are saying that my data is currently in Mumbai. Just an example you can think about. So they are simply saying that my data is currently in Mumbai. Do you have 100% assurance regarding this, that your data is in Mumbai? Krish, I'm 100% sure my data is in Mumbai. No, right? You are believing that third party called as a cloud service provider that your data is in Mumbai. And you believe that the cloud service provider don't have access to your data. Like this, there's a lot of factors when you basically go to cloud computing. I'll give you one more thing, which is called as an integration challenge. What is the integration challenge? Integration challenge means that when you basically go to a cloud computing platform, or when you basically go for cloud computing, now you have a lot of existing applications, existing services and all. And if you try to move it to the cloud platform, aligning this particular existing applications with the cloud services, cloud tools, cloud security architecture tools, like for example, now you have a firewall in your on premises, you have a monitoring tool in your on premises, you have some legacy applications. When you take it to the cloud platform, there is no guarantee that it will work as expected. Like this, the same way cloud provides you with a lot of benefits, it also provides you a lot of challenges. Okay, now why did I speak about all these things? The reason is because understand that when you go to cloud computing, the businesses, when you basically want to get a job in cloud computing, the businesses expect a lot of things from you, and the businesses expect you to solve one or another of these challenges. Okay, now before we basically talk about the jobs in cloud computing, first of all, we have to understand what is the cloud made of. These are the core technologies basically where the cloud is made of. For example, now the most important technology which is utilized in the cloud is basically what we call as a virtualization. To give you an example, team, now let's assume that I am going to a cloud platform. Okay, 99% things you are getting in the cloud platform is a virtualized thing, is a virtual, right? So for example, let's say if you see my Azure account here, okay, if you see my Azure account here, you can see there is a Azure virtual machine here. Okay, so I'm having two servers here. These two servers you see here are completely on what? Are completely virtual machines. You create a storage, you create database. So the whole cloud is relying on virtualization. If you basically want to get an example on this, let me tell you. Now I'm going to, let's say I'm going to a cloud platform, let's say AWS or Azure, whatever it is. When I basically go to a cloud platform, I say that I'm able to create things whenever I want. I can create my server, I can create my database, I can create my storage, I can create all these things whenever I want, and I can remove it also whenever I want. How is it possible? Because the cloud is the cloud is this much elastic or this much flexible by their, because they are using a technology called as virtualization. Like the on premises, in the cloud also they use a technology called as virtualization, and that is a major reason why when you basically go for cloud computing, one major basic understanding you need is what about the virtualization. Then basically what we do is the team, we have something called as a resource pooling. What is resource pooling? Now let me give an example. So I'll just visualize it here for a second. So now assume that this is the cloud service provider server. Okay, the cloud service provider have a millions of servers, right? The cloud service provider basically have a millions of servers like this. So when the cloud service provider have a millions of servers like this, what they will do, they will basically combine all these servers into a pool. So what is the benefit? Now you are a customer, you are basically asking the cloud service provider for deploying a VM. So what they will do, from this massive pool of infrastructure, they are creating your VM, right? So they use a technology called as resource pooling as well. The third one is basically what we call as SDN. So what is an SDN, team? SDN is a very interesting technology. What is an SDN? SDN stands for software defined networking. Okay, SDN stands for software defined networking. So what is an SDN and how does it work? I'm just going to give you an overview. I'm not teaching you this actually. Now let's take a simple use case here. Now let's say that this is my Cisco router. Assume that this is my Cisco router. Team, I want to configure this router. How do I configure a Cisco router initially? You need to basically have a console access, right? You need to basically have a console access. See, IP also you have to set, Light Panjala. You have to set the IP, right? So what we do, we have to first of all provide a serial access or console access to the router, and we have to start configuring it. Now, so basically, you let's say if you have a Cisco router, Cisco firewall, Cisco switch, and everything in Cisco, you can do that. Like we have a Juniper, we have a D-Link, we have a Avaya, we have a Palo Alto, we have multiple vendors. Now, think about this. If I am telling you, if assume that you are an expert in this networking, I'm telling you, get me the log files from Cisco, get me the log file from some companies. You can quickly do that. But my question is that when you have a millions of devices, okay, when you have a millions of networking devices like this, is it possible for you to basically go to every device separately and get the log files, configure it separately, monitor it separately, and manage it separately? Is it possible? Now when you go for a data center, you have a millions of network devices from different vendors, so it's never possible for you to go to each of these devices to basically each of these devices to go there and manually configure them, manually get the log files. It's very hectic, right? So see, she was saying, Krish, I need one single management interface. That's why we go for a technology called as SDN. So the SDN basically provides me an abstraction layer where I can manage devices from multiple vendors all together. I can basically manage devices from multiple vendors all together. Just to give you an example, see, you can see that, you can see that. So, so I have all my devices here, all my networking devices here. And what I will do is that I can manage all my networking devices through one single centralized interface, application, or code, but with the help of SDN. So this is one major technology used by every cloud service provider, SDN, or software defined networking. Definitely we have videos on that in the YouTube. You can basically look into that. I'm just giving an overview. Then they use a storage technology called as SAN, which basically stands for storage area networking. And the fifth one is basically very important, team. We have a word called as a automation and orchestration. Now, let me give an example. Now, let's assume that you go to a cloud platform. Okay, you go to a cloud platform. Do you have to basically do things manually, or maybe I can just revert my point actually. So, do you have to basically manually, call someone at the cloud service provider side to basically for configuring things? Now I want to deploy a server. So shall I call AWS and tell them to deploy a server for me? Or shall I have to call Azure for basically deploying a database for me? Is it like that? No, right? We can basically do it by ourselves. But you cannot see all the devices, right? Then how we are doing it? You cannot basically go see the provided devices and everything, right? Then how is it possible for you to do that? It is possible because the cloud is using a technology called as orchestration. That means multiple automations in a proper sequence, or multiple automations in a proper structure is what we call as a orchestration. The cloud is basically using a technology called as orchestration. Okay, multiple automation which is basically happening in a proper way is called as orchestration. And because we have a orchestration, the cloud allows to basically create things, delete things, modify things, update things. Everything is possible with the help of orchestration. But my question is that, let's suppose this is the cloud service provider's data center. Okay, this is the cloud service provider's infrastructure, and this is the orchestration layer. This is the orchestration layer. Now how do you talk to the orchestration layer? How do you basically tell them to do this, do that? Krish, I have a AWS management console, right? So you will basically go to the AWS management console, or you will go to the Azure portal. Like this, you will basically go to something like this, and you will talk to the orchestration layer, right? But how is it possible? You make something called as a API calls. That means that whatever actions you're doing in the cloud platform, you are making something called as a API call there. Okay, so API means stands for application programming interface. So the whatever you're doing, creation, deletion, modification, updation, whatever actions you're doing in the cloud platform, you are basically doing something called as a API calls, right? Like this, the cloud is relying on a lot of underlying technologies. Next, we'll talk about the skills which we require for a particular cloud job role. Great. Now, team, so just keeping all these basics in mind, what are the key skills which we require for getting a job in cloud computing? Now, that is a debatable thing, obviously, but in that, I am going to give you a basic skills which you properly need to get a proper job in cloud computing. Now you will find multiple people tell you that you just need networking skill, you just need this, you just need that. But I'm going to tell you the actual key skills which is really required in the industry when you basically go want to get a job in cloud computing. Either you are a developer, either you are an architect, either you are a security expert, either you are a cloud monitoring expert. For any job in cloud computing, these skills are required. You can check any job role, you can check any job role except some management job roles. For all the other technical job roles in cloud computing, these skills are mandatory. Starting from networking skills to OS skills to programming skills to database skills, to all these things are basically required if you want to get a proper job in cloud computing. But don't worry, I'm not going to give you just the name of it. I will explain one by one on each of these skills on what you have to learn. Like, when I took my last webinar, one of the guys actually pinged me on LinkedIn and said, Krish, what you said was right, Krish. I clearly understood that this is the skills we require for getting a job in cloud computing, but what do we have to learn in that? In networking, do I have to basically become the ninja in networking? When you said Linux, shall I learn all the Linux platforms? When you say programming, do I have to master programming? Like this, there is a lot of queries I got regarding the skills required. So I plan today to basically explain each of them in detail. Each of these skills I'll explain in detail what you have to learn. Okay. Now, whatever I'm discussing is a generic approach. This can slightly vary according to the job profiles. The first skill which we will talk about is what we call as the networking skills. So when you say the networking skills you need for getting a job in cloud computing, means I'm just giving you very basic skills. This is mandatory. Either you are a developer or an operations expert or a cloud administrator or a cloud architect or a cloud security specialist, cloud technologist, cloud migration strategist. So for all of you guys, these skills are basically mandatory. On networking part, you must know, you must have a very decent understanding of the network devices. Like, you must know what is a router, what is a firewall, what is a switch, what is a modem. So you must have a very decent idea on the proper networking devices. It's not like you have to master these things, but you must know the use case of all these things. What is the purpose of a router, why we use a router, what is the purpose of a switch, in which layer it's working, what is the actual purpose, what is a VLAN, then what is a firewall, what are the different kind of firewalls we are having, then what is a UTM, unified threat management device, what is a modem, what is a gateway. Like the same way, you must have a decent understanding of the basic networking devices. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, team, trust me, this is mandatory. You must be good in both IP address version 4 and IP address version 6 concept. You must know, you must basically know, you must have a good understanding of IP addressing, IP addressing version 4 and IP addressing version 6. It is not a rocket science, it's quite simple. Like the how many bits in IP address we are having, what is a network bits, what is a host portion, what is broadcast address, what is network addressed, what are the different kind of communication, subnetting. So this is an optional skill, but basically I prefer for most of the job roles you also has to need subnetting as well. So these are mandatory skills for sure. The third skill which you need, which is mandatory, which is 100% mandatory, is basically what we call as a OSI and TCP IP protocol suite. Now team, what is a OSI? This is a reference mechanism, a logical reference mechanism, and a learning strategy for learning networking. That means that, like the same way you have chapters in a book, which will help us to organize and manage things. Okay. Like the same way we have a particular textbook where we have chapters organized. When you're talking about OSA reference model, it's like a logical textbook which basically help you to divide the communication properly, learn the communication effectively, and basically understand on each layers regarding how the communication happen, how the data is basically flowing, what happens to the data. So that is basically the OSA reference model. Having a clear understanding of the OSA reference model and TCP IP reference model is a very important thing. So what do you have to learn? So first thing is that in OSA reference model, and both means in the reference model, you have to learn about the different layers. You have to learn about the protocol stack, that is protocols in each layers. Then you have to basically learn about the uh, you know devices in each devices which is working in each layers, like including security devices. What happens to your data? Then how these layers communicate each other. Like this, you must know attacks in each layers, obviously attacks in each layers. Like this, you must basically know about this in the thing. Okay, and previously, it used to be very much challenging for learning this. Now team, you will get a lot of short notes, you will get a lot of simplified diagrams on the internet for learning this quickly, very quickly. This is basically very important. Okay, so these skills are basically, so Krish, I am a developer, why should I know this? You must know this. How do you design an API, or how do you define the communication protocols for something if you don't know about these things? So for learning cloud computing, the first skill is basically about networking skills, and these are the first three things. And obviously, you must know what is routing, what is the route table. It's optional, but I'm telling you what is. No, you don't have to basically do all these things, but you must know this. Just a concept. What is routing? What is the route table? What is a switching? What is a VLAN? These kind of concepts can basically help you. And obviously, if you are a security expert, obviously firewall and other things are also very important for you. And these are the basic skills which you need to learn when talking about networking for learning cloud platform. So this will take hardly a week. If you are starting to learn cloud computing, if you're planning to learn cloud computing, getting this basic skills is just a week of time. Even 2 days also is enough for basically getting this whole understanding. So we are not trying to make you do everything in reality, but you must learn about these concepts and how this works, get some practical ideas on that in a week of time maximum. Okay, this is basically very important, because I will tell you the reason. When you basically go for interviews, especially onto cloud computing also, you will never get questions only from cloud. You will get questions from cloud, Linux, and multiple other platforms. Okay, the second most important skill which we need on the cloud computing is basically what, or need for the career in cloud computing, is what we call as a Linux and Windows OS skills, like including the command line also. Let me give it a bit detail. Now team, do you know that Windows also use Linux a lot? Microsoft and Windows also use Linux. Do you know that when you basically go for most of the cloud platforms, your mobile phone, your Android mobile phone, many of the supercomputers, many of the storage technologies, many of the SAN vendors, many of the hypervisor vendors, I mean virtualization vendors, everyone use Linux. So because that everyone is fond of Linux, or everyone use Linux in one reason or another, it is very important for a person for learning cloud computing to have a decent understanding of Linux. Now when I say this, maybe some of the people will feel, Krish, that is wrong. Why you don't have to learn Linux for getting a career in cloud computing? But what I have seen till now in my whole experience, I've been working in cloud from 2010 onwards, and till date, I have seen that any job role you're looking into, means any technical job role you're looking into cloud, needs Linux skills in one time or another. For example, now, if you're not familiar with Linux, when you basically go for certain commands in AWS CLI, Azure CLI, etc., you will stuck, because many of these things are basically based on Linux. You have a lot of Linux flavors here. Okay, so what you need to learn in Linux. So team, this networking part is clear to all of you, right? This part is clear to all of you, right? I hope this is basically you're able to understand what I'm discussing, right? Great. Now the next thing is basically Linux. So when you basically want to, when you basically go for Linux, okay, now what should I learn in Linux? That's what the next thing is. So in Linux, obviously you must know the Linux fundamentals. What is Linux? What is a Linux file system? What is it? Means the Linux basics. Just get the Linux super basics. Okay, and understand the basic commands which we use in Linux. Trust me, you will use it at one point or another for sure. Okay, you will use this at one point or another. When you basically work in cloud computing, you will use this at one point or another. Team, correct me if I'm wrong, team. I'm sure that there is a lot of people who is working in cloud here. Have you used Linux commands or anything on this at one point or another, team? I'm sure, right? We will use it for some, at least some reason, right? Maybe for doing something, maybe for some synchronization, maybe for some executing some particular task and all. We'll use Linux, right? So obviously very important. Okay, so okay, what kind of commands I'm talking about? So I'm talking about the basic commands like ls, permission, file permission commands, directory listing commands, changing the path, just the basic commands. Okay, just the basic commands. Learn the basic commands, practice it. It's quite easy to practice, right? And learn the command for displaying the IP address like ifconfig. A lot of commands are there, right? Just learn the basic commands for networking or servers, and just the basic commands. Learn how to install software in Linux. So basically, when you go for Windows, it's quite easy. You have a exe file or do you have a MSI file? You just double click on the file and the story is over. But if you go for Linux, even though you have files like this, you have this, tar file is there, you have this rpm file is there, but still most of the Linux package installation or application installation needs command line skills like dpkg command or rpm install. Like this, there's a lot of commands are there. So learn the basic commands you need for installing packages. This will vary according to the Linux distribution. Okay, for Red Hat based Linux it's different, for Ubuntu it's different, like that. Then learn about the basics of how to create a user. Like in Windows you have user, right? So how to create a user and all. And this is basically mandatory for team. When you basically go for cloud computing, especially when you're going for a technical job role in administration, etc., like cloud administrator, etc., you must know the commands like chmod, then ch own, change ownership. Like these kind of commands are basically very important for you. Learn these commands and learn the commands for process management like top, ftop, etc. And this is, now you can see these commands are, this is for automation. So for making your job more easier or basically doing the task automatically, you have to learn shell scripting like cron jobs and all. So these are the skills which you require in the Linux part. The reason I am basically trying to explain each particular skills is because I have seen many people take a lot of time learning something which is unnecessary. Now I am focusing only on those skills you need for basically getting a proper career in cloud computing. So as you have this basic skills very strong, whatever changes happen to the cloud platform, you will be able to always upgrade yourself smoothly without any issue. No, see, I'm talking purely about the technical job roles. But when you say auditing job role, it's not like this. I'll tell you for sure. That is a different story. This is more about technical things now. But when you go see now, I'll give an example. Krish, I'm a manager. I'm an auditor. Do I have to learn this? No, definitely not. But you must know at least one cloud platform. That's very important, right? That's very important. Because see, now what I am saying is basically from my experience and basically what I see from others who basically in my network, who are in my whole network in LinkedIn, which is connected to me, the people who is talking to me, the companies I worked. That's how I basically see this. Now in Windows, what you have to know. So in Windows, what you have to know is that, so obviously in Windows you have to learn about the what is a remote desktop. That's one very important thing. You must know, it's actually RDP, there's a typo. So you have to basically know about the remote desktop protocol. You must know about the remote desktop. You must know about the PowerShell, because now if you are a person especially who is working in Azure and all, this PowerShell commands can be sometimes very much crucial. So learn the basic PowerShell commands. In fact, my one very good thing I found about Microsoft is that their documentation is super beautiful. They make a simplified documentation. So getting a proper understanding of PowerShell is basically quite easy for you. And this one, I don't have to work on this. Don't have to work on this, but you must know what is Active Directory, what is the use case of Active Directory, what is a AD domain controller, what is a AD federation. Like this, you must learn and know about the basics of domain controller, identity management. You must learn about, I forgot to add the point here, but again, Active Directory, proper identity and access management concepts, proper federation knowledge. Those kind of things are basically very important. And last but not least, understand the what is a Windows Defender, what is a Windows firewall, just the basic concepts. These are the skills required in the OS side when you basically want to learn or work in cloud computing. Now, Krish, I am working in cloud without this knowledge. Yes, maybe you can work, but these are basically going to make your cloud journey more easier and more flexible. The next one is basically now getting mandatory, which is basically what we call as programming and scripting languages. Like when I said this in my previous few videos also, I was a guy who always frustrated about programming or scripting. I never liked, or now also I never like, going on to this programming and scripting. But the truth is that if you want to work in cloud computing, I'm talking about technical job roles. If you want to work in cloud computing, if you want to work in cloud skills or networking also, if you want to work, you need to have a programming and scripting knowledge. But Krish, I'm not interested in programming. Still, you have to learn. The reality is you have to learn. But in what level? Let's say, as I said, you must know about the concept of Linux shell scripting. You must know about the basic Linux shell scripting and Windows PowerShell. So don't have to learn or master it. Learn the basics. Learn the very basics. You can find hundreds of videos YouTube. Okay, you can find videos which can teach you all these things in 1 hour. Just YouTube it. Just go for platforms like YouTube, etc., and you can find thousands of videos which can teach you PowerShell, Bash, etc., in an hour. Then get some basic script for copying a file or automating a backup task. So like this, don't have to do everything, but take some time every day. Maybe take some 10 minutes every day. If you can spend that for 2-3 weeks, you can master these things for sure. Try to write the script and run it by yourself. Now, the reason why I have written the particular name called as Python here is because, see, uh, the first thing is that in the scripting fundamentals, I will tell you, you must know about the concept of variables, loops, functions, etc. in scripting fundamentals. When shell scripting also is basically very important. And when you basically go for Python, what do you have to learn in Python? Don't have to master Python because you're not going to be a okay. Just Shanraj, you can just Google, YouTube it. You can find thousands of videos. Trust me. And if you feel some issue, just let me know on LinkedIn, no problem. Okay. Now, when you basically go for Python, okay, the Python is a very simplified language. The reason why many people like Python is because the dependency is basically very less, and it makes this more flexible than many other languages in the market. That's why Python has become now one of the most favorites of everyone. I'll tell you the benefit of learning Python. This Python is available everywhere. Either if you go for serverless computing, or if you basically go for automation, either or if you go for any of the cloud concepts, Python is if you go for machine learning, AI, everywhere you will see this Python. So learn the basics of Python and don't focus on Python programming, focus on Python scripting. The basics of Python, doing a task automatically or in a properly automated way with Python. Don't learn Python programming for writing an application, but learn Python for automation. And the last but not least, learn JSON. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So Krish, it's Java, it's very tough. No, JSON and Java is different. Now, don't confuse the Java with JSON. Java is basically good, but it's means at least for me, it's very much complicated. JSON is a very simple, super simple programming language. Trust me, it's a scripting language. JSON is a very simple scripting language, super simple, I will say. Writing a JSON script is the most easiest thing in the world. Trust me. Okay. If you basically want to, for example, let's say you go for AWS Identity and Access Management. You go for, organizational management. See, there's an example for a JSON script. There's an example for a JSON script. Writing the script is a 2 minutes job. I'm sure that if you spend 30 minutes, you can master this. It's whole 30 minutes. You don't have to learn more, just 30 minutes for only one day. You can learn JSON for cloud. So like this, these kind of things are, and learn only for your need. Don't have to learn the entire stuff the whole day. Learn only for need. For example, the same reason I told you in Python part. For Python, learn the basics of Python, and learn Python only for automation, because you don't have to learn Python for making a very complex application and all, right? That is not a job. But learning shell scripting is very important, and learning JSON also very important. Okay, but this is a fact, team. Like, even if you feel it not a good idea or not, but it's a fact. We need to basically have Python and shell scripting and JSON as a very essential skill for working in cloud computing. Maybe, when you start with a small company where you have everything manually done, it's quite easy. But when your company starts growing, or when you basically go to a company where they have to process a huge number of devices, millions of data, or things like that, you can never depend on manual efforts. You have to go for automation. And these are the hands perspective. These are the thumb thing for basically when you basically go for cloud computing. So learn programming and scripting skills. And whatever I'm discussing now, if you have some queries or anything, feel free to let me know. You can basically let me know on LinkedIn. You can just Google it, or you can just go to LinkedIn and search for Cloud Krish, and you will find my name, and you can just chat with me on that, and I'll definitely help you that for sure. But make sure that you learn these things in detail. Okay, very important. The next skill which you need for basically going for a cloud computing is basically what we call as database concepts. At least some of you now may be feeling like, Krish, I will drop the plan for learning cloud because I feel cloud is now getting very much complicated. The actual thing is that cloud, what I'm trying to convey here is that, team, when you have these skills handy with you, your cloud journey is going to be a piece of cake. Okay, so database also, you don't have to be a DBA. I'm just telling you, for database part, learn the fundamental. What is a database? What is the difference between relational and non-relational databases? What is the command for logging into MySQL? What is the command for creating a DB? What is the command for backing up a DB? What is the command for listing a table? What is the command? What is a in-memory database? What is a benefit? Like this, learn the database concepts. And last but not least, learn virtualization. DevOps is completely optional, team. I'm not saying because it's DevOps is completely optional, but learn about the very fundamentals of virtualization. Again, here also, no, there is no reason you have to basically become mandatory, but learn what is a hypervisor, what is the difference between type 1 and type 2 hypervisor, what is the networking in virtualization, what is the containerization. So basically, if you want to learn about containers, we already have a video on that. And last but not least, because now companies are moving their DevOps and DevSecOps platform to the cloud platform, learn basics of what is a DevOps. Learn what is a DevOps, what are the different benefits of DevOps, like what is a version control system, what is a build tool, what is a CI/CD pipeline. Just learn about these things, and these are going to be very much helpful for you. So these are the essential basic skills you need for getting into cloud computing. Okay, now the next thing is that, team, again, certifications. Krish, can I, like, do I have to get certified for getting a job in cloud computing? This is a common question which is there for a long time. Is a certification mandatory for getting a job in cloud computing? Now, think about this. You are an interviewer. Okay, you are an interviewer where there is 100 people came for interview, or maybe there is a 50 people came for interview, and you want to have an initial screening process. You see a person where you have multiple certifications on cloud computing. Will that increase your confidence initially? Will give you a first level of confidence, team? If a person is having some certifications, will that give you a confidence initially? That will give you a primary level of confidence, right? Like the same way, you're working in a company and you're working for a client, and the client see that you have a particular certifications on the respective things you're working for the client. That will increase the confidence, right? So from that perspective, certifications are one of the key things. Certifications are the key, like, for the primary entry to a job market, plus to basically showcase your skills on your business and to your clients, and to basically pursue your next level of job skills. Certifications do play a very important role. But again, as I say in all my batches or all my trainings, certification is basically a very important part, but think it as secondary. nurture your skills. Like for example, now if you are coming to me, or if you're coming to any place for learning CCSP or AWS security or AWS architecture or DevOps or anything like this, focus on your skills. Focus on your skills. Try to learn it in a real time perspective. And after that, think about certification, also mandatory. Now that's a very important point. Now see, I'm your client, and I'm telling you, you need to do a project for me. And when your company says that uh, these guys are basically certified also, indeed that client will get more confidence, right? So certifications do play a key role in your skills, in your company perspective, but primary thing is that your skills matter most. Skills, then certification will give you a job. Skills and second certification. First is not the certification only. Certifying will be basically help you start, but doesn't help you to get into the job. Trust me. Now, previously, when you basically go for a job interview, how do they ask questions? What is cloud? What is IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS? What is a AWS S3? What is EC2? Trust me, team, you will never find a question like that nowadays. You will never find a question like that, because now that is not companies want. Okay, that is not now companies want. Companies want people with real skills. So I'll come to that part, but before that, understand that the certifications are a key skills, but for that your skills comes first. Get your skills onto the maximum hands-on, maximum expertise, then go for certification. It is very important, but it's not like go for every exams possible. No, no, don't go for that. Krish, I have a CCNA, I have a CCNP, I have CCIE, I have a RHC, I have a RHC SA. Can I get a job in cloud? No, this is not useful. This is useful for that job role, right? For cloud job role, if you have that things, that knowledge is very important, but have a relevant certifications which you basically, you're based on the job you're pursuing for. Focus on the certifications which are relevant for the job roles you're pursuing for, whether you're an auditor or a manager or a technology professional or a SOC expert, whatever it is. Focus on certifications which is basically going to enhance your skill job role. Okay, not any random certifications. Okay, the next most important thing we are having is the team. What are the different job roles in cloud computing? See, getting a proper real skills is basically where you can practice. You can find a lot of projects after you're learning on the particular platform. Start getting projects. You can find many of projects given by, like now we have a huge collection on the internet, which is free of cost. Don't believe what Telegram people, or some, maybe there's a lot of people on Telegram which are basically, there is a lot of scammers out there who will tell you they will give you project for money. In LinkedIn they will tell you project for money. Don't believe them or go behind them. Just get free projects. There's a lot of communities who basically would like to share a lot of projects and all. Get in touch with them, go through the website, get the projects, start doing it. That's it. That's the best way. Talk to your instructors like that. Now, the next is that different job roles. So when I started my journey in cloud computing, there was only one job role called as cloud architect. Now, as I said, you have more than 200 job roles now in the market currently. Just I recently, when I looked into it, I have seen there is more than 200 job roles specifically onto cloud nowadays. Even though you feel like these job roles are very similar, or these job roles are basically very much similar, there's a lot of difference actually. So what is the role of an architect? The architect is basically responsible for designing and implementing cloud-based solutions. They design their architecture. They make sure the things are basically designed as per the line of the business requirements. The engineer will take care of building and maintaining the infrastructure. DevOps engineer will basically build the gap between development operations on the cloud. Developer will basically make sure that the applications are developed on cloud with cloud perspective. Like this, each job role have their own particular requirements. Now, before you go for a cloud interview, before you go for a cloud interview, and getting these job roles is based on what you want to pursue, what is your existing skills, and what you're trying to pursue is definitely something which differs. That's it. Now, before you go for an interview, what are things you have to do? First thing is that when you get an interview call from a particular company, try to get maximum information about that company, their business locations, their areas of focus. Okay, their business locations, their areas of focus, their market products, what technologies used by them, their various their various white papers, their clients. So get a decent understanding of the business which you're going to interview for, or you're basically getting interviewed from, and the cloud platform is used by them. And make sure that your cloud skills are up to the mark. Clearly review the job description. This is a very important point. Like, don't use the same resume for all the job roles and basically, Krish, I have a resume prepared, I'm going to apply for 100 job roles in 100 perspective. No. Okay, review the job description very carefully. Review the job description very carefully and see that whether the job description is basically based on your skills. Now, I have seen many people tell me that, Krish, I have not applied for the job because it's not 100% meeting my skills. No job descriptions are basically, what I feel will 100% meet the skills. Because, can I say that this is basically, bare expectations? This is just expectations, right? They can expect anything, right? Even if the company, even if the company you are going to work for is only having 2 servers, they will say that experience of managing 1,000 servers. That's the truth, right? If you see the various jobs and various JDs in the market or JDs in the internet, I have seen that even though the company is having maybe 10 servers totally to manage, but they will tell you that you must have experience of managing 1,000 servers. The same is applicable for every prop. So if you meet the core skills required, if you can basically meet the core skills required, and if you meet at least 70 to 80% of the particular job description, apply for the job. Okay, that's very important thing. And you will find a lot of interview questions for cloud computing. In fact, I'm planning to start a series on that also. I'll definitely start a series, but practice the common cloud interview questions. And last but not least, now the companies know that even though you have a good memory where you can memorize everything and basically learn that, the biggest challenge the companies will face is that the people may have a lot of theoretical knowledge, but their practical experience may be lagging a lot. So what they will do is that now companies will, maybe in most of the interviews now, they will try to make or try to give you hands-on. They will tell you to show things. Okay, now if assume that if I am a particular interviewer, what I will do is that I will tell my the candidate that, okay, show me how to do this. Deploy this architecture for me in front of me. So for example, if you're going for a programmer interview, they will tell you, write this code for doing this. Don't speak, don't talk to me regarding something. Show me your skills. These are basically very important for a interview. So now when you basically go for an interview, okay, now in the interview there are some key points which we have to keep in mind. Okay, it is like this. First of all, team, in every interview, obviously you have technical assessments where they will ask you questions, technological questions. They will ask you what is cloud, what is this, how this technology works. Like you'll get a lot of questions on that. But also there is a word called as behavioral interviews. Okay, when you're answering technical questions as well, go for the STAR method. There's a method called a STAR method. What is STAR method? Situation, task, action, result. Okay, like for example, what is situation? Situation means that you have to basically explain them a context or a challenge you have basically faced. And on that particular challenge you have faced, what is your task? Okay, what is your task? What action you have basically performed? What action you have basically performed? Okay, what action you have basically performed? Then what is the next thing? What is the next thing? Result. So basically, what was the outcome? Like this, when you're explaining a scenario, please try to explain in this perspective. For example, now they will ask you in every interview, this question is now common. Tell us a particular scenario you have basically faced, or one of the most challenging scenarios you have faced. In that particular kind of scenario, don't try to basically simply just mention something. Go for the star method. Situation, where you explain the context. Task, where you basically explain what is your job in that. Action, what you do. And result, what was the outcome. Okay, for example, now in the situation perspective, you can tell them when you are working as a cloud engineer for a company, and like this, you basically faced a particular challenge on the application performance or something, and your task was to basically identify the root cause of the performance issue, and your action was basically doing these things. Your result was basically like this. So answer in that way, which will basically make it more impressive. And in most of the interviews, they will also give you case studies. Like, they will definitely give you case studies. Now basically, they will tell you, they will give you scenarios, and they will basically tell you, or to explain certain scenarios. And last or very important thing is the soft skills. Now again, like the same way other things also matter, your soft skills are also very important, because including your communication, your team building activities, your adaptability, your problem solving ability, all these kind of a soft skills are basically very important for you when you basically go for a job role. And last one is, when you basically have a, sometimes, in most companies now I see this, that there's a final round where the CEO or maybe a senior member of the company will basically talk to you. Stick on, this is basically where many people fail the interview. Like, I'll give an example, team. You are going for a management job role. Okay, assume that you are going for a job role where you're going to be a CISO, or maybe you're going to be a cloud manager. So if you answer the questions more technically, okay, if you answer the questions more technically, that will help you to clear the first rounds of interview. But when you basically talk to the CEO or a guy from the management, what happens if you talk technically, team? Tell me. As a cloud manager, as a person who is pursuing for a cloud manager job role, if you talk to a person in a technical perspective, to a CEO or management, you talk about one vendor, one cloud platform, you talk about the cloud technology only, or configurations only, what is the problem? They will realize that you are not suitable for a management role, you are suitable for only a technical job role. That's the reason why, talk based on the profile they are pursuing for. Great. Now the next is the team. We have, like, you will get multiple kind of questions. Actually, you will get technical questions as well as management questions. What is a technical question, team? Like, they will give you questions regarding concepts of cloud computing, the various cloud models, the various cloud security best practice, security configurations, problem solving. So like this, you will get a lot of technical questions. And these questions are basically for assessing the understanding of your skills and concepts particular to cloud platform. Maybe, for example, what is the difference between these two services? How do you deploy a particular thing in the cloud platform, like that? And management questions are basically where you basically get questions from the leadership, problem solving, team management, communication, etc. So focused on the kind of question and answer accordingly, and also based on the kind of person you are basically addressing. That's a very important point which we have to understand. And be specific, team. That's one very important point, is that, see, be specific to the question, the job role you're applying, and the kind of company. Second is that, use proper metrics for answering. Like, I will say that, properly quantify your answers, like that, which they must feel that you're passion on that. That's very important. Okay. Now, last but not least, when talking about job role, I'll show you some example job roles now, team. These are not real, I'm just giving you sample job roles here, team. If you see the job roles here, you will see that whatever I told you before, see, you need that skills. Now, there is a job role called as a senior cloud architect, maybe for one of the company. Okay, you will see that you need to collaborate with network engineers, application teams. How can you collaborate with network engineers if you are not about understand networking there? How can you collaborate with application teams if you're not aware of the concept of libraries, application programming concepts, IDs, etc.? So you must be able to. So this is basically a very important skills you need, as I told you before. Plus, you must learn the platform which you're. So this is a pure AWS job role they're asking for. So be specific to the job descriptions. I want to show you one more thing. See this team. So in every job role, like you have a job roles now starting from 0 year experience to basically 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, like that. You have a lot of experience like that. Be specific to the job role. Don't have to learn everything. Be specific to the job role. Okay, like that. And last but not least, team, resume and CV. Now, when talking about the word called as resume and CV, okay, team, what is the difference between resume and a CV? Resume is a short document. Can I say? Resume is a 1 or 2 page document which is just presenting the key factors about your professional experience, your educational background, your skills and all. And a CV is a longer detailed list of document, right? And basically, if you are a person who basically want to have an in-depth explanation of the things you're doing, you can go for a CV. Otherwise, basically go for a resume, right? Especially when you go for certain countries and all, we basically go for resume mostly, or we will go for CV. It's based on the kind of job role you're going for and your experience as well. But there are certain points I won't tell you on that. When you basically prepare a CV or resume, okay, I'm assuming that you have a proper amount of experience. You must obviously give your first name and last name. You must give your name first, and if needed, you can give your contact number initially. Then don't simply put the address or maybe all the things. Be clear with the objective in the CV or resume you're preparing. Be clear you have with the objective. Write the objective specific to the kind of a job you're looking for. Don't have the same objective for all the job roles. Be specific to the job objective. Okay, be specific to the job objective. Second point is that when you basically go for the job, you must clearly mention about the, definitely I'll definitely share with you, and you can basically find means I will share it on LinkedIn. Once I basically finish this, I'll share in next few days. Don't worry. Now, you what I personally recommend is the team, more than your educational skills, first put your work experience. Like for example, don't simply copy and paste from the internet or maybe any other websites or on other templates. Be specific to the company name, your job position, and clearly mention the job role. Means make it particular pointers, but that pointers must clearly pronounce what you are doing in that company. Definitely, there are different formats, different opinions on this. I'm just giving a best practice. There's no universal best practice we are having, but it's based on the country and there can be a lot of changes. But primarily, team, your skills must be, if you have a proper experience, your skill must be highlighted first. Then you must basically put your education, your skills, and then your education. But this can basically vary according to the country and the locations as well. I'll try to put more templates and all in my LinkedIn profile. Okay, that's it.